All right, before I get started, I like to do a mood check. So, like, thumbs up if you're feeling really good, thumbs down if you're feeling bad, and somewhere in between if you just really don't know. All right, sounds good. So, hi, everybody. My name is Denise Morales. I'm the owner of Be Nurtured, which is a mental health nonprofit that focuses on the community. One of our mission statements is to hold values of transparency, personal growth, and perseverance as a way of changing yourself and also hourly changing your community. We do programming such as workshops, podcasting, as well as self-care Sundays, some psychoeducation opportunities, just to make mental health more accessible to communities. But today I'm holding the artistic expressions of family dynamics and generational trauma. And so generational trauma, what does that say to us? It's going to be very interactive today, so we're going to be bouncing back. So yes.
When experiences that gone through, maybe younger, um, also the experiences of your parents and their parents that leave habitable behaviors as you get older throughout your kids. I'll probably experience something that I would do to my kids if I don't learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I feel like.
Yes, yes. And I resonate with that. Yes. Anybody else would like to chime in? Mm-hmm.
In a sense, like kind of piggyback off of that, sometimes I feel like generational trauma is like hereditary.
Mm-hmm.
Like even though yes, we pick up on it in like behaviorally, I feel like that still kind of shows up in a physical sense as well.
Yes. So thank you for sharing your definitions on generational trauma. And just our roadmap on today, we're going to do a topic introduction, psychoeducation on family dynamics, some of the theorists in counseling that bring up family systems. And then we're going to be our drawing activity of our family dynamic, and then our reflection, evaluation, and then finally our conclusion. Okay? And so, for our definition of generational trauma that I'm going off today, so generational trauma, also known as intergenerational or transgenerational trauma, refers to a transmission of trauma from one generation to the next. This type of trauma can stem from significant adverse experiences with our ancestors, such as war, genocide, slavery, abuse, seeking asylum, severe economic hardships. These traumatic experiences can impact descendants, the mental health, emotional, behavioral, even if we are not directly impacted by the trauma, it can still kind of go down trans generationals. So us, our grandparents, our children, and then sometimes we even put that off to our friends and put that off to other people that we interact with in our systems. So the impact of family dynamics, and it was kind of mentioned whenever I asked, what do we think about generational trauma and who do we think it impacts? So these are some of the patterns and some of the effects on the family dynamics. So emotional patterns, we see unresolved trauma that can reflect as anxiety, depression, or PTSD in descendants. These emotional patterns can also influence family interactions and relationships. So think about like whenever you're handling with mom and maybe she's been through a lot and we don't think about like why is she so sad or why is she always so hard on me and I don't really get it. Well, let's break it down a little bit. Like what is there for her emotionally that she's experiencing that maybe we have not reflected on? Some behavioral patterns, coping mechanisms developed by one generation, so substance abuse, avoidance, some of those defense mechanisms that come into play can be passed down and normalized. Oh, we always been this way. That's just how the family is. Like some of those things that we hear that the family dynamic and this is who we are, and maybe we become to make that our identity of the family. So communication. Families impacted by these type of generational traumas may adopt unhealthy communication styles that maybe make the family more cohesive, uncohesive, such as secrecy, denial, repression of emotions, impacting the unity of the family. And then it goes down to parenting styles as well. So we talk about how that affected us, how that affected mom. Well, what does that do to our children? So traumatizing parents unconsciously project their fears and unresolved issues onto other children, family, friends, parenting styles, and it just creates a cycle until we decide to break that cycle ourselves. Is there anything in here that y'all found interesting or that you would like to add to this definition? Because I feel like it's very moldable. Mm-hmm. Alrighty. Yes.
I think the emotional patterns really sticks out I know that like in my family background, we don't really talk about and use those certain labels when it comes to depression and anxiety or PTSD. And so you're really having to figure that out for yourself in a way of being able to go back and recognize those patterns and even be able to undo them in the first place. So putting a label and putting a name to those to identify it, I think that really sticks out.
And that's really good, and thank you for sharing. It isn't until we are able to identify, label, and target, once we know what we need to work on. And just to kind of share a little bit of testimonial. So for me, I'm first generation, and my parents are immigrants. So for them, surviving in the U.S. is very much like, I need to work. I need to provide food on the table. So there is no space to hold space for feelings and emotions. So there's a lot of repression in that, like, oh, get over it. Like, you just need to work. You need to pick up a broom. That's why you sad. You need to clean. So we probably heard that as well. And so we start picking up of like, okay, how was I not noticing that before? Like, how am I noticing that now? But yeah, thank you for sharing. So family systems and counseling. So this is just a psycho-educational process for you all. And maybe we think about, all right, I'm really going through something and maybe I need some help with this, and going into a clinical setting. I want you to know what are some of the theories that focus on family systems. So Murray Bowen is Bowen's family systems theory, and he has the genogram that is used within counseling. And so within the development of Bowen's family systems theory focuses on multi-generational transmissions of behaviors and patterns and concepts of differentiation versus yourself. So you and your family, and they also try to go back like 3 generations forward. Salvador Muchin, which is structural family therapy, creates some of our family therapy, examines family structures, boundaries, and also hierarchies. So who are we really listening to? Is it just mom? Is it dad? Is it the children that are leading the household? Where are these hierarchies in that system? Virginia Satir, which is conjoint family therapy, we known her for emphasizing communication patterns and self-esteem within the family. So what is the family's identity? How do we uplift the spirits, the good ones, not the bad behaviors? But within psychoeducation, the important aspect is awareness. Recognizing that it exists, an impact of generational trauma in the family is the first part of addressing it. So targeting it, labeling it, knowing what's affecting us. The second step is understanding our triggers. So identifying triggers and stress responses that link ancestral trauma to help us manage our reactions. So whenever mom says, I don't care about your emotions, go pick up a broom, what was my trigger in that? Like, you didn't care to hear me out when I was trying to express myself to you. And then healing practices. So therapy, mindfulness, family discussions can aid in healing generational wounds. Alrighty, so we're gonna move into our drawing activity, what we came for. So for our drawing activity, make sure you have a paper, pen, and please raise your hand if you don't have either of those materials, because we can get those to you. Alrighty. So for our drawing activity, I'm going to give you about 5 minutes so you can channel your inner Bob Ross, or not, because I am not a Bob Ross, but I'm definitely expert at figure sticks. So you'll probably see that, figure sticks, okay? And so I want you to draw your unit, including yourself. I don't want to prompt you too much, but just draw your family unit and include yourself. However artistically you want to express that in the paper, it might be different heights, different patterns, different people in different lineups. So go ahead and take the time and draw. Alrighty, so for this next slide, if you're not done drawing, it's okay, because we're gonna actually add to our drawing. For this next one, we're wanting to add representation of symbols, words, and signs of how you interact with the individuals in your picture. So you might be putting arrows between you and mom. You might be putting arrows or block singles or hearts or stars. But I also provided the Bowen's genogram symbols in case you need a representation of what kind of symbols communicate different things. So for family relationships, it shows like marriage, it shows engagement, cohabitation, love affairs. Emotional relationship shows harmony, hostility, violence, abuse. So maybe if you want to use these, you can, but if you don't, maybe you have your own way of showing how you interact with that family member. So I want you to focus on you. and then put symbols towards how other people in the family system interact with you. What have you gotten from them? Maybe what have you given to them? So put symbols that are transactional in communication. Yes, you want me to, I can open this up in a different one if you want me to make it bigger. Okay. So you don't have to use these. This is just like an example of the genogram that is used in Bowen's family systems, but I can make it bigger. Yes, give me a second. And also, if you Google Bowen's basic Bowen's family systems, you can also pull it up. That way, you can have it on your phone. Bowen's family systems genogram. And if you go to the Google search, you'll find some in there. But I'll open this up. So we have some unique ones in here, like violence, abuse, manipulation, distant, poor, closeness, distant hostility, distant violence, physical abuse, controlling, jealousy, admirer, neglect, fuse and love, conflict, hate, emotional connection, distrust. I'm like, I run out of paper space. What if I need all of these? And you might find yourself that within the same person, multiple of these go into play. So it can be that, you know, sometimes there's very much closeness with my mom, but sometimes, you know, she's very hostile. So there's no right answer. There's no one linear way. I just seen this one too. One night stand. It's even on here. Your one night stand might be in your family systems. I know. Even the sneaky link is on your casual relationships. No, I'm just like. Right. No, but some people might consider it. Yes. Welcome in, welcome in. Yeah. All right, y'all, let's bring it back in. So I want to know how the exercise was for you before we move on to our reflection. How was it for you to draw your family dynamic and then had to add words and symbols to those relationships? Ooh, sorry. Yes. Was there anything surprising that came up or discomforting of having to dig? Because there is some discomfort in that.
But it's good, so this is appreciated.
Okay. Alrighty.
I feel like I might got some detachment issues because it was just me and the kids. I wasn't thinking about nobody else.
Yes. So we're going to go into discussing our family systems a little bit first. And so we're going to go around the room. And if you feel comfortable discussing, who did you draw first and why did you draw them first? Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then the oldest down to the youngest.
All right. Mm-hmm.
For me, I drew me first. Like I said, I only thought about me and my children. I didn't think about anybody else. And then after that, I drew my daughter because like me and her are like this and we're close. And then, but I'm close with all my kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's my daughter, that's my only girl. And then I drew my oldest son, and then I drew my middle son. And then I was
See how you did it with a kid.
Not the middle kid. Yes. Yes. Thank
I
you.
started with my oldest son, and I didn't even really think about that until you just said that. Like, why didn't I start with my husband? But now thinking about it, I started with my oldest son because that was the time where I was a single mom and I had the most growth, where I had to grow up and really step into who I was. And so, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
I didn't even draw a person first.
Okay. Go
I
ahead.
drew a broken house.
Oh,
Oh,
that's.
And then after that, I didn't even draw myself. I drew with my dog, my deceased dog at that.
No.
And so, and I think I drew my brother, my older brother, because I'm the baby in the family. And so he's the first person that I'm actually like the closest to compared to everyone in my family.
Thank you.
And then I drew myself. And then I drew my daddy, then my mom, then my eldest brother, who we're close. But like, if you were on the outside looking in, you think he'd hate me. But like, that he has attachment issues. And then my sister last.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Thank you.
I didn't draw people. I just drew a broken picture frame with me as a circle in the middle, and each crack is a connection to my family member, a different one.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And so it just goes to show the symbolism that we hold of how we see things, how we see our perspectives, how we see ourselves playing these family dynamics, broken relationships, some of the hardships, some of the closenesses. Who are we putting first? Why did I draw myself last? I, for myself, drew myself. And I've already done this activity, so I'm just redrawing the one I had already done first, because once you do it again, it's not the same as the first time. So when I drew my family dynamic, I put myself facing back, but I'm facing my family and everybody's facing me. So I feel like the relationship's very much like I see them and they take from me. And it's me with my dog. So it's only me and my dog facing my family, like us going through the struggle together. Sorry, I love my pooch. So that's my family dynamic. And so we went through kind of some of the family placements. For the attributes of the symbols that you put on there, the shapes of symbols that you gave each person. Does anybody want to share on some of the symbols that maybe really made you reflect the relationship you had with some entities in your picture? So I saw this hand first, and then we'll go here.
Well, I started with love. There was a lot of love in my family. But then I noticed I drew focus on negativity real big.
Okay.
Because that causes the discord and conflict and the distance and poor connection. Because my husband and I are really trying to get out of this, but we tend to, why are you doing that? And not praise them enough and not point out the good things. He wakes up in the morning and the first thing he may say is, game, what are you doing? This is my 12-year-old son who he always fusses about spending too much time on the game. So he calls him game. And that's his passion, to be a gamer. Anyway, so I was like, he focuses a little too much on the negative. Like, I don't know, it's a theme in the house. And then even for me, I used to, but now I intentionally just make sure I give them something positive every morning, every night, just intentionally. And then the other symbol, I don't know what this symbol was.
Here, I can go back to the symbols. If you need to.
I think it was, but anyway, this other symbol, it was something negative that drives some of the disconnection. It was the box, X, and then circle to the right. Controlling. And then that controlling part. So it's like, for me, my husband's Nigerian, so he's like really controlling about what the kids do. So it's just like, oh my God, can they just breathe? You know, like Jesus. And that causes some disconnect, even though everybody loves my husband, he's a little too negative.
Thank you.
Ebo. And you already know if you know Ebo. Oh, no. Yeah. That's the whole. And I'm sound. I can make it.
Yeah, no, welcome. Yes. Welcome. We got the chairs right here. All righty. Thank you for sharing. So yes, go ahead. Share right here.
Okay, so the way I had actually drawn this, it's kind of hard to really like, do the lines,
Okay.
especially the non-lines that I could have drawn. So I just did like 3 lines that I just made up. So like a wavy one is like emotional. Oh, fun fact to know is that each of these lines indicate no trust. So how I wrote them is that like they're lines, but they're like separated from each other, just like staggered. So the wavy one is like an emotional connection. The straight one is no connection, and then the rigid one that's like just the triangular. Yeah, zigzag is there's a connection, but not sure exactly what that is. And so kind of like how I said in terms of like my older brother, the one that's like right above me, he and I have an emotional connection, but like there isn't much trust. And then my mom and my eldest brother, so like I know they love me, but I can't trust them with anything that involves me. And so that's why it's like I know there's a connection with them, but I don't know exactly where it stands. And then my sister and my dad, like no connection whatsoever. No trust, no nothing. And my dog put a little heart. I loved him. But like, yeah, like our family dynamic, we're Nigerian, and I was just talking about this with my counselor, how like we started very close. Like we started very, very close. But we don't know at what point we all became emotionally distant from each other. And so me being in the counseling field, my older brother and I have this joke that like we feel sorry for whoever like starts dating us because our family is not going to, it's going to be like a complete shit show. But then you're like, are you sure y'all related? Because you and I are the only ones that are the most emotionally available people who are, actually talk about our feelings and all that stuff. And so, yeah. There's a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, take these back to your therapist. Thank you for sharing. Yes.
So when I first had the first 5 minutes when we were just drawing, I realized that I started with my caregivers, my mom, and I drew her partner, and then I drew my dad and like my grandma, and then I drew my siblings. But they're barriers, and there's different like levels, and the lines indicated the boundary lines. And so the second time when we started adding the emotional relationships, I realized why they were placed where they were, and it was kind of easier to, write the squiggles of disconnect or the closed offness or the one between my mom and me. It's like she's still on that outer tier because there was that neglect, but we have built an emotional connection, so that's what's penetrating through. And lastly, I drew my partner and his children and his ex-wife, so somehow they made it into the family dynamic.
Take them in.
Really just realizing, what all those different, I guess, ties are. So this was hard.
Thank you for sharing. Yes, and I see 2 hands. We'll go here and here.
Yeah, so vulnerable moment. I realized I was completely avoidant. I drew me and my kids and my grandson, and then I got on my phone. Like, if I'm being real honest.
Yeah,
and I didn't want to do any of that. I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to, those people, they're like over there. And then there's me, like I said, my kids, my grandson. I didn't want to embarrass myself and draw a dog. So whatever. So there's him. But yeah, so I just didn't even, I just didn't even do it.
Thank you for your vulnerability and transparency, and that goes to speak. Why is that? Like, why was it hard for me to sit and do this activity, sit with myself and think about it and reflect? And then it's maybe some of those wounds that we're not ready to open at this moment.
So still there.
Yeah.
So I just didn't want to do it.
Thank you for sharing. Yes.
Like I said, I don't have any actual human illustration for my situation, but I do have a big picture that is Christ. The only real symbol I have is a heart from my mom, because she she grunted the weight of everything for my 30 plus years. You know what I'm saying? While my dad was on a different part of the picture. I'm a black sheep of my family. I ran away at 16, jumped out the window, and I ain't never been back. So I really don't have a relationship like that with my siblings or my parents or stuff like that. But I'm trying. So most of my symbols is just distance. Trying not to hate, but like I said, the only person I'm really connected to like that is my mom.
Thank you for sharing. Yes.
I drew myself first, and then I drew my daughters. And when we were on the first part, I just kind of already started putting symbols by each one of my girls. And for my oldest girl, I put like a little thought bubble with a question mark in there because that's my thinker. And then my youngest baby, I drew like some little wings because she's my free spirit baby. And she's in the human jukebox, the best band in the land. So if you go to the battle of the band, she'll be on the field. But it was interesting because when I was drawing this is the first summer in 2 years both of them have been home because they're both off in college. And I'll tell you, when they were in high school, it was flip-flopped. So I had a way of interacting with each one of them because my oldest was the free spirit and my youngest was the thinker. And so I've had to, and so when I drew myself with like this little face, like, I don't know what the hell is going on right because there's just been a lot of adjustments that have had to be made in my home because they're changing and they're growing. And I tell people all the time, I always thought, raising toddlers and teenagers was like the most difficult stage of parenting, but I think young adults, because there's just no proximity there, like there's distance there, you really have to be intentional about learning who they are and showing up for them as they're changing. And they don't always communicate that. A lot of that comes through observation and just waiting for the right time to have some of those conversations. And so it's been a challenge. And so it just reminded me of how much I will be ready for August the 19th.
Go back to school. Yes, and thank you so much for sharing. And that also goes to show that we as people change, people in our family dynamics change, that relationships change over a course of time, and those are some important reflections to have with ourselves. So give yourself a pat in the back for sharing some of your hardships, vulnerabilities, and transparencies about your family systems. And our conclusion here is that understanding and addressing generational trauma within family systems can lead to healthier relationships and improve mental health outcomes for yourself. Through psychoeducation and therapeutic interventions, families can break the cycle of trauma and foster resilience and well-being for future generations. So thank you so much for participating with me today. If you would like to follow up, this is a QR code to my organization, which is Be Nurtured. I have a website, and I also have a coupon code for y'all if y'all want to shop online. I'll be adding some shirts. I'll have it up hopefully within this next week, but it'll be up for the whole entire month. But I just graduated yesterday. Thank you. I graduated from Houston Christian University with my master's in clinical mental health counseling. So I just took NCE on Monday, so I'm a future LPC associate that's coming up for y'all. So thank y'all so much for participating. It's just a little casual, little something, but I appreciate y'all so much. Thank you. Yes. And I'm around if y'all have any questions, any comments, or whatever you like.